Hello, everybody. Welcome to Charting with Dan. I'm Dan Murrell. Joining me, Lon Harris.
Hey, Dan.
How you doing, Lon?
Pretty good. How about you?
Good. It was. I was just talking about how sometimes these weekends go by where there's a lot of releases, and you're like, oh, I wonder what the story's going to be. This was kind of a fun one to watch because
this was a surprise. Yeah,
I would not have guessed this exact result, but in a weekend in which we had Brad Pitt, A-list star, squaring off against Rambo, Sylvester Stallone, a cultural icon,
long storied franchise,
action icon. They both got their clock cleaned easily by people that clean clocks for a living.
Very nice.
Downton Abbey, the #1 movie at the box office domestically, $31 million, handily beating Ad Astra and Rambo Last Blood, the two other big releases opening this week. This is the second weekend in a row. Lon, we talked about last week with Hustlers, how the majority of the audience for that film were female moviegoers, and how, depending on who you market a movie to, that can really lead that film to a success that maybe surprised anyone. That happened last week with Hustlers. That happened this week with Downton Abbey, where we had, I was reading in Deadline's coverage of this, 74% female movie-going audience, 32% moviegoers over 55, big Downton Abbey fans. But for the second week in a row, a mid-budget film was driven to a surprising box office opening by an older and largely female movie-going audience.
Yeah, the olds, I feel like a few times a year we have these big surprises where we remember that old people still like going to movie theaters. The older generations, they have not switched completely over to streaming. They're still in that habit of going to the theater on weekends and going to see a new movie, and they're not maybe biased in the way that younger audiences are towards only seeing big tent poles or spectacles. They'll go support something just that interests them. And we had book club last year. I think there's always an example or two. Downton Abbey, another success story in that mold.
Downton Abbey, I feel like because it was not on network television, it was aired on PBS here in North America. The masterpiece. But I feel like it sort of got this reputation as a very niche thing. But I looked up the numbers because I wanted to see exactly how the last couple seasons that Downton Abbey was on the air, it was averaging between 10 to 13 million viewers a week.
Yeah.
Which is that is prime time numbers. There are not a lot of shows that draw that kind of viewership week to week. Now
it was sort of a sleeper in its first season or two, but then it started winning big Emmys, and that's what got it, I feel like, nationwide attention in America.
Well, a hefty chunk of the audience that watched the series to the end showed up at the movies this weekend. Full disclosure, I saw it. I thought it was delightful, but I enjoy that kind of film. I liked the show. I like Julian Fellows. I like Gosford Park.
Yes.
I like all kinds of things. If you haven't seen, by the way, if you're a fan of Downton Abbey and you haven't seen Gosford Park, it's basically Downton Abbey. Maggie Smith plays pretty much the exact same character.
Yeah, Julian Fellows wrote the script for Gosford Park, and in working for it, he realized, I have so many stories in this world to tell that I didn't get to, and that really is where Downton came from. In season 1 in Gosford Park, you can see there's a lot of interplay. It's basically Gosford Park without the murder mystery.
Yeah. It's also a great late career Robert Altman movie.
Oh, yeah.
I highly recommend it if you are a Downton fan.
Good.
Check out Gosford Park if you haven't seen that.
Great performances.
Let's look at Lon, of course, as we mentioned, Downton Abbey originated across the pond, an adaptation of a British television show, and that made me curious as to how Downton fares against other films from British television, adaptations that have opened in theaters. Now, this is according to the Bits Index, the butts in the seats, and by that number, Downton ranks 4th. Sacha Baron Cohen, number 1 and number 2, with Bruno and Borat. Both of those characters that appeared on his Ali G show, and then were spun off into their own movies.
Which was originally a British show. It came to HBO in the U.S. later.
Yes. Borat, what surprised me, and I forgot, was that Borat opened well, but had word of mouth was insane, and it did so much business, whereas Bruno sort of drafted off of Borat, but did not have as much on the back end.
No, Bruno did not become a cultural touchstone the way Borat did.
No.
If you are too young to remember, Borat was a legit phenomenon when that movie came out. Everybody saw Borat.
It was the Austin Powers of that, as far as we still do it. My wife,
it's never leaving us.
It's never leaving us. It's part of the
cultural.
It's part of the cultural fabric, that swimsuit and everything else.
Yeah.
Number 3 was The Saint.
Wow. Wow.
Val Kilmer adaptation of the show The Saint was number
Elizabeth
3.
Shue.
Then Downton Abbey, and then at number 5, and I had to look it up because I thought it was Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, and I was like, wait a minute, were they on TV? And I had to go back and trace their trajectory, which is that Wallace and Gromit were in a series of short films.
Right.
Then they had a one series television show, and then The Curse of the Were-Rabbit came out of that. So they went from short film to TV to film.
Right.
So that would be number 5. Now there is an asterisk, a caveat there, which is that if we were going by a wide release opening weekend, Steven Soderbergh's Traffic, which was an adaptation of the British miniseries Traffic, would have been number 5, but it opened its first weekend in limited release before it expanded wide. So if you're looking at just wide releases, Traffic would be at that.
It's spelled, the British version is spelled with a K, and it is great.
I haven't seen it. I love the movie.
If you like the movie, it's worth checking out. It's really interesting, the way they did the adaptation.
Lon, last week we talked about how Hustlers had set an opening record for STX Entertainment.
Sure.
Another great weekend for a small to mid-major studio because Downton Abbey has set the record for Focus Features.
Oh, look at that.
That is now, it topped Insidious Chapter 3 to become the highest opening film for Focus Features. London's Fallen there at number 3. Burn After Reading at number 4. Atomic Blonde at number. What an eclectic group of movies.
It's funny because when you say Focus Features, I tend to think of it a little more art housey. But then you look at these and it's like, well, London has Fallen, not really for the art house.
Well, they've been dabbling a little more in bigger films.
Right.
Their highest overall grosser, though, domestically, is Brokeback Mountain.
Right. Yes, that's more of what I think of.
That opens smaller
when
prestige
I think of
award
Focus,
season. Yeah. But Downton Abbey is going to be right up there amongst the highest grossers for Focus Features, and we'll see what it does as it continues on. But yeah, big win for fans of a comedy of manners, of royalty.
Dowager Countess.
Dowager, I like it. Titles, dukes and earls and lords. Footman, you name it.
I didn't know it taught me what a footman was.
Yeah, the difference between a
butler,
a valet, a footman, all that kind of fun stuff.
That's going to come in useful one day.
Hey, you never know. You could be on, I don't know, Jeopardy or Who Wants to Be a Millionaire or something. Let's look at the rest of the top 5. As I mentioned, Ad Astra came in second place this weekend, starring Brad Pitt neck and neck with Rambo: Last Blood. The difference being that Ad Astra cost about 4 times what Downton Abbey cost. The budget reported around between $80 and $100 million. They did some reshoots, so the question of what the budget's going to be is not exactly sure.
It's expensive to shoot in a big manor home in the English countryside, but more expensive to shoot in space.
Yes, or to look like you're shooting in space.
The vomit comet that makes it look like you're in space.
Yeah, that does not sound fun to me. Ad Astra, strong reviews. Critical word of mouth was good, but audiences did not seem to connect to the movie as well. Received a B- cinema score, which is not a good sign for its prospects going forward. If you look at the audience reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, they were not good. So this seemed like a movie, and I think I don't think it missold itself. It looked like a bit of a heady sci-fi film, which can be very divisive with audiences, and it seems like Ad Astra is one of those movies.
Yeah, I think with sci-fi, people really respond if you've got a really action-oriented sort of sci-fi movie. It's always a gamble when it's something that looks a little bit more ponderous, a little more thoughtful. I think they were really selling this on Brad Pitt. And it's just like...
It's a strategy that just worked well along with Margot Robbie and DiCaprio for Tarantino and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which itself is kind of a bit heady in the sense of non-conventional.
Oh, yeah. It's long and it's non-conventional and it's thoughtful. But I do, like you add in DiCaprio, you add in Tarantino, you add in Margot Robbie. That had a huge cast. I think that makes a difference. This one, really, it's Brad Pitt, maybe Tommy Lee Jones in space. And it's like, that's the pitch. You're either in or you're out.
This is just the latest kind of questionable opening for Fox. If you're Disney, who's bought it, I think that you definitely are looking at Fox's year this year, and you've got a lot to be unhappy about because Ad Astra is just the latest underwhelming opening just this year for Fox. Their 3 big budget 2019 films cost a combined $460 million. That would be Ad Astra, Alita Battle Angel, and Dark Phoenix. And let's look at what Fox's opening weekends, their top 5 opening weekends this year have been so far. As I mentioned, Dark Phoenix is their top opener. Opened to $32 million, but cost $200 million. That is reportedly going to lose tens of millions of dollars to the studio. Alita Battle Angel cost $170 million, opened to just $28 million. We've talked on this show many times about how its worldwide gross has made it a borderline case as far as making a profit, but definitely not a massive moneymaker for the studio. studio. Ad Astra, as we mentioned, a budget between 80 to 100. I put down 90, just kind of split the difference. That has a $19 million opening. That has a lot of work ahead of it to turn a profit for the studio. And then numbers 4 and 5, Breakthrough, budget of $14 million. That's a modest hit for the studio.
Yeah.
It did well. Stuber, $16 million budget, opened to 8.2, but with advertising and promotion, the movie did not break out the way that it wanted to.
Yeah.
And keeping in mind that the studio also released earlier this year The Kid Who Would Be King, which cost $60 million and made back half of that worldwide.
Tough.
So if you're Fox, you're not having a good year. And if you're someone who works at Fox and you've just been bought by Disney and you're under a lot of scrutiny, and now you've had a pretty, I think it's fair to say, maybe not fully disastrous, but certainly disappointing
A string
year.
of disappointments.
I think that there's probably a lot of reason for you to be a little nervous right now.
I mean, Ad Astra, you look at just that one, it is a huge gamble. I mean, they knew going in this is a gamble. It's a director who's had well-reviewed, critically acclaimed movies, but not breakout hits. Lost City of Z was, I think it's a great movie, but it did not set the box office on fire when it came out.
Yeah.
You know, you've got celebrities who can sell a movie, but it's been a long time since Brad Pitt's name just opened something to a massive audience. And I mean, I think they were really counting on, like, it's going to be great. It's going to get award consideration. It's going to be super buzzy. And, you know, when that doesn't happen, now you're behind.
I think it highlights the difference between how a year can look on paper and then how a year can produce in reality. Because if you look at this year on paper, you know, Ad Astra, I think, was greenlit 3 years ago, back in 2016. You know, X-Men had come up with Apocalypse right around that time, which, you know, wasn't a massive hit, but I don't think the franchise was beyond saving. And
No,
then,
I mean, X-Men's going to be one of your reliable, you know, make a new X-Men movie.
If you're Fox, you're looking at the sheets for 2019 and you're going like, okay, well, we've got the last X-Men movie, or even if you don't know it's going to be the last X-Men movie, a new X-Men movie with a very popular storyline that we're going to try to get right. You have a James Cameron produced, Robert Rodriguez directed, huge sci-fi spectacle in the vein of an Avatar type universe.
Yeah, like dream project for a lot of people involved.
You know, you can't blame them for perhaps, you know, that's just the weird calculus of the movie business.
Yeah.
You never know how this thing is going to work out. There are 2 major releases left on the Fox schedule for this year. You've got Ford versus Ferrari,
that has some strong buzz. It's some good reviews. James Mangold, Matt Damon and Christian Bale.
But a reported budget around $100 million. So again, if you
and
get
that one, it doesn't seem like it should be. Aside from the actors, it's like it's a period car racing movie.
You're not just going for prestige on that. Again, when you're hemorrhaging money or at least struggling to break even, $100 million budget, you're really going to need that to hit. And then the animated film Spies in Disguise with Will Smith and Tom Holland. Again, animation, big stars, big voices. The budgets are, you know, tough to keep in control. I wasn't able to find any actual data yet on what exactly the budget for that is, but I
mean, we've seen, if you're not Disney or Pixar, these animated movies they're not a sure thing. Like they can work out gangbusters, but we've seen it not work a few times even this year.
Yeah.
Where they've come in with sort of like we thought that How to Train Your Dragon threequel was going to be a huge hit, and you know, it's kind of soft.
I think even even if Ford versus Ferrari and Spies in Disguise hit, I think this is probably going to be your Fox would like to just put behind them. Or I guess Disney Fox would like to put behind them and keep going.
Certainly.
Let's look at the rest of the top 5. Rambo Last Blood comes in 3rd place. As I mentioned, that is the 5th film in the Rambo series with a reported budget around $50 million. Audiences, however, gave it the lowest cinema score of the Rambo series with a B. However, First Blood was not tracked in there. It came out a little bit too early for cinema score.
Right.
This is probably a good time, probably the right time to wrap up the Rambo series because, again, looking at the bits index,
late 80s maybe would have also been good.
Exactly. Well, perhaps. Dollar for dollar, this movie opened almost even with Rambo, 2008's Rambo.
Right.
However, that's not the whole story because when you look at tickets sold, the number actually dropped about 500,000 from the last Rambo installment back in 2008, over a decade ago. The film peaked by selling 5.6 million tickets in its opening weekend for Rambo First Blood Part 2. Perhaps there's different ways of looking at 80s action, but Rambo First Blood Part 2 is definitely, I think, the one that most exemplifies the just excess glorifying of just muscles and guns and everything.
That's the one people think of when they think of Rambo.
Yes.
Like, and they're like shooting, like what UHF is parodying, like that Rambo. That's part 2.
That's First Blood.
Because First Blood, which is that's what's so weird about this franchise.
It's bizarre.
First Blood is this very somber, real like social commentary picture.
Well, yeah, it's about taking care of veterans and adjusting to life.
And just like an anti-war, like this is the consequence of wars. You break these people who go and fight in these wars. And then 2 is basically the most 80s jingoistic, patriotic, rah-rah, American war machine supporting movie there's ever been.
And then if we throw that chart back up, Rambo 3 is about Rambo going to Afghanistan and fighting with the brave Mujahideen against Russia, which is in its own way just like, wow.
It's great. All these movies have always been very political. The first 3 were not super divisive, though, in their own time. And I feel like the last 2 have been. Like, because with 2008's Rambo, it's set in Burma. It's extremely violent.
I mean, he's literally blowing people's heads off with a big gun.
Disintegrating bodies on screen. And when it opened, that was very divisive and controversial. People were like, it's gruesome and unnecessary and like so violent. And then this one too has proved sort of politically divisive.
It's very weird to, like you said, to watch the track of this, which is a first film that is really, while it has violence, is almost kind of anti-violence.
Oh, very much so, yeah. And it's not an excessive orgy of violence. It's not like a one-man wrecking crew adventure movie.
Right. And then you go to Rambo First Blood Part 2, which, as you mentioned, is very much just like machine guns, rocket launchers, the biggest explosions you can find. And then Rambo 3 is so much just anti-communism, anti-Russia.
Yeah,
they're
like Michael Bay movies before Michael Bay was making movies.
Michael Bay, I mean, just very much just jumping into that conflict. And like I said, it came out in the 80s, and then just the way the politics, the geopolitics of that region, it really does not hold up compared to what happened 15 or so years later and continues to happen in that region. And then Rambo, as I mentioned, is just all about things blowing people's heads. It's just bizarre. Really. It's a very weird franchise.
Yeah, it feels like it keeps, throughout the times, it keeps trying to play to the masses in whatever era it's in, what it feels like the public sentiment is going to be.
Right.
Which is very strange to do over 30 years of American history.
Very bizarre. So that's Rambo Last Blood.
And I feel like the political stuff may be hurting it this time. I think a lot of people probably stayed home because they read that there's some potentially ugly politics they won't like.
I didn't read anything about that. I just
really?
didn't go. I'll see it eventually, probably.
Oh, I'm definitely going to see it.
Maybe. I don't know. Who knows?
It's a Rambo movie. I'll have to check it out.
Let's check out the rest of the top 5 before we move on to the top per theater. Rounding out the top 5, It Chapter 2. It is approaching the $200 million domestic mark and $400 million worldwide. However, domestically, it's performing about $90 million behind where its predecessor was at this time in its run. We knew that going in. Not going in, but after the first week that this looked unlikely to capture the kind of enthusiasm that the first film did. And then Hustlers has broken the $60 million mark domestically. After just 2 weeks, it has passed I Feel Pretty to become STX's 4th highest grosser ever and climbing. So
big hit for those guys. And it's still getting, it's buzzy. I feel like it might get some nominations if it keeps up this level of.
Well, Jennifer Lopez in particular is getting a lot of buzz.
Yeah.
So we'll see about that. Let's look at the top per theater. And just edging out Downton Abbey per theater is the documentary Where's My Roy Cohn? In just 4 theaters, $10,301 per theater. Roy Cohn was, among other things, a lawyer and an assistant to Joseph McCarthy. He was an advisor and lawyer to Donald Trump in the 80s and in New York. He was a very notorious figure leading up to and following his death in 1986 from AIDS. Also just, again, kind of a curious case study in that he also helped to lead what they call about the Red Scare, but the Lavender Scare, which sort of was a search in much the same way that they were trying to hunt out communists to hunt out homosexuals in the United States government, when in fact, even though he denied it. Roy Cohn himself, a gay man.
Yeah.
So
he's played by Al Pacino in the Angels of America films. I don't know if you ever saw HBO's adaptation of those plays. So he's a character. He's become very representative of that whole era in American politics.
Yeah. So, and then the documentary dealing not just with his life, but with the ramifications, with his personal philosophy, which he imparted onto others, and how that has continued to live on past him and into different parts. Rupert Murdoch, also somebody that he had associations and ties with. So again, very relevant figure.
A very controversial figure, but a fascinating and very eventful life that touches on so many contemporary sort of issues in American life and politics. And I've heard the film is great.
I've heard great things. I have not had a chance to see it, but I've heard that it's a very fascinating, scary, interesting, you name it, documentary. So that's your Perth Theater winner for this past
He's
weekend.
mentioned in Billy Joel's We Didn't Start the Fire.
That's your Roy Cohn.
Yeah.
Right next to Juan Perón, I believe, right?
You are correct.
Thank you. I know a little bit about Billy Joel. Let's look at the top 5 worldwide, and it's the same movies that were our top 5 domestic movies, just in a little bit of a different order. Ad Astra, the number 1 movie worldwide with $45 million. So a better start worldwide, building on that. It needs to maintain that momentum. Just behind it, though, Downton Abbey with $41 million, then It Chapter 2 with $38 million, Rambo Last Blood, $27 million, and then Hustlers bringing up the rear with $19.8 million. So we had, last week, we had several movies from the Chinese market, or money coming from the Chinese market. This week, we're back to 5 Hollywood films, a lot of those driven by the fact that we had a fairly healthy weekend at the box office domestically, which helps the worldwide numbers for those Hollywood films.
I'm sure Europe helped Downton Abbey as well. Probably a lot of UK, Western Europe viewership, because it was also a popular show out there.
Very popular show. Who doesn't like Downton?
It's a great show.
I mean, I know some people like Downton Abbey, don't like it.
If you just got to give it a few weeks, because it does for some Americans. There's the whole it's a lot of lords and dukes and earls, and you might not know what everybody's job is or what they're all doing. But if you give it a few weeks, it's just a very well done.
I mean, I get it.
You get sucked in.
I do get it, because even watching the movie, just like, oh, Mr. Crowley, was going to I was just like, yeah, okay, I could see how maybe someone didn't.
It's not for everyone.
It's not for everyone, but I enjoy it. I don't know how you could have antipathy toward it, I guess. I don't know how you could be aggressively against Downton Abbey, although I'm sure that there are some people
and they're such good actors, and it's just charming. It's nice to spend a little time in that world.
It's the same reason I watch the Great British Baking Show.
Sure.
/ the Great British Bake Off. We call it the Great British Baking Show here because Pillsbury has trademarked the term Bake Off.
Oh, I did not know.
So that's why you had to change the name in the United States. That's your English to U.S. trivia for the week. Use it on your trivia night. All right, let's look at the top.
Next time you make your trifles.
Yes, exactly. Don't get a soggy bottom. Let's look at the top 10 for 2019 domestically. A little bit of a change here. It Chapter 2 jumps under the chart at number 7, dropping Us, John Wick Chapter 3, and Hobbs and Shaw down a notch. How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World, unfortunately, leaves the top 10 list after being there for most of the year since, I think, March. But look at that gulf. It looks like It Chapter 2 is actually going to be the only movie for 2019 thus far to settle in the $200 million range.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's kind of nuts how things have settled that way.
Yeah.
It really kind of drives home the difference between a lot of the movies now. Is like you have these massive mega hits, and then you go down. There's a substantial step down, and then you hit the other ones.
Yeah, it's kind of, if you look at sort of the bottom of the list too, it's like the jump between, I guess not really. But Us, such an outlier on there. It's this incredibly bananas, strange original movie joining all franchises and sequels and established IP.
Well, it'll be gone soon.
Sorry, Jordan Peele. It's a great movie.
That's the truth. Frozen's going to come out, and that's going to be
It's true, but it's a shame. Everybody rent Us.
Yeah. I like that movie a lot.
I just rewatched it this week. So
I think I'm going to rewatch it for in the Halloween season, as we always watch a bunch of movies.
I feel like the rewatch helped me a lot. There were some lingering things from the first viewing that I was not I hadn't quite closed the circle on. After a second time, I feel better about it.
I'm looking forward to seeing it again.
I enjoyed it.
Let's look at the top 10 of 2019 worldwide. Just one change that we talked about a little bit last week, which is that Spider-Man Far From Home inched above Captain Marvel to become the third highest grossing film of the year worldwide.
We saw that coming.
Oh, yeah. We knew that was coming. Like, literally, I think it was a couple $1,000s last week was the difference. Very close. Other than that, nothing changed. Nothing threatening right now imminently the top 10 list, but there's a couple things that could sneak on there, and then as we get into the holiday season, that's going to change a lot.
October brings some new.
And then you get into November, December, the holiday season, Star Wars, Frozen, all the stuff that you got to come out. Plus probably some surprises, Jumanji, who knows? We'll see how everything goes. Lon, this is the part of the show that I know I'm so happy that a lot of people are enjoying.
This is why everybody's been tuned in, just waiting for this. Enough charts.
Exactly. First of all, we've got to get to the countdown to Cats. If you have not been joining us, we are mounting down the days until Cats hits theaters.
Oh my God.
We're under 90 days, Lon.
Within 3 months, we're going to be watching this movie.
Yes.
I almost can't believe it.
It's insane. We are 89 days away from.
What are we? Are we the Screen Junkies doing anything? Are we all watching Cats
I feel
together?
like we should.
I feel like we got to make
a group together.
Yeah. All right. We'll talk about that off camera.
Well, Lon, we're not just mounting down to Cats. We've been doing this for about a month now. We are also each week meeting a cat because I've been soliciting what the hell this thing is for quite some time, and no one was really able to explain it to me. And so I figured, as a public service for both myself, for you, for everyone on the show, and for everyone watching the show, we should meet these cats. Now, I'm leaving spoilers out because I don't want you to know what's going to happen to them, but I feel like you should know.
Because the plot of the whole show is meet these cats.
Exactly. I don't want to spoil what little plot apparently exists in the show.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do want to introduce you to some of these characters. Now, last week I forgot who we had covered the week before, so we're also going to start recapping just very quickly.
Good.
Not explanations,
Yes,
just sharing the names of the cats that we've met before.
Yes.
So just to review, the first cat we met, of course, Buster for Jones. Who could forget Buster for Jones?
It's a nightmare.
It's nightmarish to be played by James Corden. Then we met Old Deuteronomy, who will be Judi Dench's cat in this film. Then McCavity, the mystery cat, who I spaced out on last week. How could I do that? To be played by Idris Elba with a fedora.
Right. He's the one that doesn't sing.
Does not sing, apparently.
Just hanging around.
In the musical. And then last week we discussed Jenny Any Dots, played by Rebel Wilson. A fun-loving tap dancing cat.
She's the tap dancer, right? That's what we discussed.
This week is a big cat.
Oh.
This week is the cat that you probably have seen or heard more than any of the other cats.
Really?
Because this week we are talking about Grisabella. Grisabella, also known
the Jennifer Hudson cat.
Okay. Grisabella, also known as the Glamour Cat, is an exiled member of the Jellicle cat tribe. Grisabella is also aging, pining for her younger days as a more lithe, beautiful cat.
But Jennifer Hudson? She's not. Okay.
Well, I don't know. I didn't write the musical.
That seems like the part you give Judi Dench, not Jennifer Hudson.
Well, strangely enough, that was the part that Judi Dench was going to play.
Oh,
she was going to play Grisabella.
Yes.
But she got hurt, and Elaine Page took over the role and then made it that's kind of the Grisabella.
And that's Elaine Page, I'm betting, on the right.
That is Elaine Page on the right. That's kind of the performance that people, that's the high watermark for many people for Grisabella. Grisabella, it is also implied, has turned to cat prostitution in her later years. So, you know.
Is there such a thing as cat prostitution in this world?
Maybe not in your neighborhood, but there's some pretty sketchy corners. Sometimes I'll drive around and I'll see some cats sitting on the corner. And I'm like, those cats are up to no good.
Okay. I'm gonna stop asking questions. I'm just going to accept it.
It's implied that Grisabella has become a cat prostitute.
I mean, she's wearing jewelry in this, so I guess she's got to pay for these fancy shawls somehow.
Now, the most famous song from Cats, which is, of course, Memories, is sung by Grisabella as she attempts to win back the favor of the Jellicle tribe. She just wants to go home to her friends.
Do we know why she's been exiled?
No.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm sure that I don't want to spoil everything. I feel like there's intricacies in the film.
We'll find out. We'll find out during the course of the action, I'm sure.
As I mentioned,
somehow McCavity is behind this.
I think McCavity, the mystery cat, is somehow, and this is the glamour cat. I think McCavity is somehow behind all of this.
Very suspicious.
As I mentioned before, Dame Judi Dench, supposed to play Grisabella. Elaine Page took on that role in the original London production. So yes, when you hear Memory being sung in the trailer and in many other clips and etc. of Cats, that is Grisabella, who's yowling. You are hearing translated to song, I assume, through some magical process. I don't know how it works.
Grisabella. Cat prostitute.
Yes.
They're too young to get.
Is that a Fred Garvin reference?
That's a Fred Garvin reference.
Dan Aykroyd's Fred Garvin. Wow.
They're all too young to get.
That predates Cats. Technically, Cats was doing a Fred Garvin reference.
Well done, Cats.
Anyway, so that's Grisabella. From what I've heard, this is a corner piece in the Cats universe. So this is a biggie.
Sure. Yeah, that's the big Memories, the big show-stopping number.
Yes.
J-HUD, the big casting.
Perhaps the most famous cat we've met and important so far is Grisabella.
She's going to be singing that song on the Oscars, I'll tell you right now. So get used to it, everybody.
She is 100% going to be singing that song on the Oscars. So get ready
gear up
to hear Grisabella singing and Jennifer Hudson's nightmarish face as Grisabella, unless they fix the effects. Maybe they will when Cats opens in December. So that's our cat this week. Tune in next week. We'll be meeting another cat. Who will it be? Will it be Rum Tum Tugger?
We haven't met Rum Tum Tugger.
We haven't yet, and we might not for a while. It's up to me.
Rumple Teaser.
Maybe.
We got Mungo Jerry.
Mephistopheles.
Yeah,
right.
We got so many.
I don't know.
We've done a good job just now.
We've done okay.
Cats.
Yeah, we've done
Pretty
good.
proud of us.
Well, we're going to find out a lot more about them in the weeks to come. Lon, one movie hitting theaters and wide release this weekend, which is Universal's Abominable, the only wide release opening this weekend.
It doesn't feel. I know it was called what? Smallfoot.
No, that was a different movie.
I know, but it feels like we just had. I'm having a real hard time keeping these separate in my mind.
Well, and then we also had the Leica movie, which was
Missing Link.
Missing Link, which is also sort of about a big.
It was like a Bigfoot.
Bigfoot, yeah. There's a lot of big feet Yeti type movies.
Too
coming
many,
out.
guys.
Well,
put these projects together somehow.
There will be a review of Abominable.
Oh.
Here on Phantom Entertainment later this week. I'm seeing it in a day, I think tomorrow.
This is the one where Zendaya is not Michi.
Zendaya is not Michi in this one. No.
Yeah, I always say that
Zendaya is not Michi. LeBron James is not Gwangi. I don't know. So that's one of my favorite videos of all time. Also of note, keep in mind, several movies opening in limited release this weekend. One of them is Judy. The Judy Garland biopic starring Renee Zellweger. Keep an eye on that one because that could be a contender as we get into awards season, particularly for acting awards for Renee Zellweger.
She's very,
big push
very
for that.
buzzy.
Yeah. So Judy opening in limited release this week. That's it, Lon. That's all I got for you.
Those are the charts.
Those are the charts. We'll see how Abominable does next week. The charts, the Cats. We got everything out. We'll see how Rambo does. We'll see how Downton does. Anything you want to plug?
Just follow me on Twitter at LONS. That's it. And
LONS.
watch Cats. Watch the Cats trailer.
Watch the Cats trailer. You know what? Go back after we introduce a cat. Go back and watch the trailer again and just go like, hey, now I know who that cat is.
You guys are going to be experts by the time you see this movie. You're going to be impressing all your friends with your cat.
You're going to be schooling your friends. You're going to know which cats are hookers and which cats are not hookers. These are the things you need to know when you go into every Cats movie. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week.